Okay. Hello everyone. This is CounterYolo, bringing you another video in Star Trek Online. And in today's video, I'm going to go over what, in my opinion, are the strongest lockbox and Pro Pack Starship choices to pick in the upcoming 2021 event campaign. It's changed a little bit versus the past couple of years' versions of the event campaign, so we'll go over those basic things. We'll go over what I feel are the best Sea Star and Fleet Starships in the game, a couple of lowest star considerations as well. It won't be a full one like the last lowest star video was, and then we'll go into the lockbox and promo ship choices that I feel are really good. Feel free to see the time links in the description, and with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the big changes, unlike last year's version, which was a 4-parter and gave you the option of 1,000 Lobi or a little bit of Lobi plus a tier 6 coupon from the C-Store, this time it's going to be a 5-part campaign. And the grand prizes is, I mean, we haven't fully gotten all the details yet, but I felt it was important still to get this video out, because I'm going to get busy later on during the year. So the choices, as it's been explained on Twitter anyway, is that the grand prizes is either going to be a Cuba token for either a Lockbox Starship or a Pro Pack Starship. And as an alternative to that, it's going to be a lot of Lobi. Or I guess the correct terminology here is a good amount of Lobi. So my personal opinion on it is that since the last campaign was a 4-part campaign, and the reward was 1,000 Lobi as the alternative to a tier 6 coupon, I imagine it's going to be at least that much Lobi, if not a little bit more than that. Maybe 1,250 if they go for 250 Lobi per part of the campaign in total. So because of that, in my opinion, it's now important to talk about what are the best lockbox and Pro Pack starships to choose from inside of the game. And so with all of that, of course, I need to talk about different things that I think are going to help bias the list really further. First off, when it comes to loot box starships in general, I think that we have to really only talk about starships that are better than other starships that are available in cheaper methods, like the C-Store, the Fleet, and the Lobi Store. If they're available in one of those places, you might as well just pick the C-Store Starship or a Fleet Starship, or, if there's a better version in the Lobi, or there's promo starships available through the Lobi Store occasionally throughout the year, maybe you should just pick the Lobi option, and then you get a Starship plus extra stuff too. Another consideration, of course, as well, is because faction-specific console packs are now gone from the exchange, the DPRM console, which is considered one of the most desirable consoles in the entire game right now, is really hard to find because you have to get the Atlas prototype Dreadnought Cruiser if you're trying to get more DPRMs than what are currently in the market right now. So if they make it so that your choice of a tier 6 starship from loot boxes is actually tradable, then the Atlas is going to be a very solid choice as well. There are many ships that are better than it, but it is a solid ship. But it's really the console itself is why you want to potentially get that one. If you're wanting to sell stuff on the exchange, that one is always going to be a very solid choice too. Additionally, because we have full KDF Starship access now, so you get a KDF Captain to 65, it means that, well, over the past couple of years, a lot of our Federation and Klingon 2 packs and such, at least even in loot boxes, were pretty much, hey, here's a Fed ship. Then here's a Klingon ship that's basically the exact same stats with the cloak. And so in those circumstances in this video, I will be ignoring the Federation ship and focusing on the KDF one. Because in those circumstances, the KDF one is just objectively better because it's a Federation ship plus a cloak. So it's going to be better. Beyond that though, my biases is going to be that Gemini Vanguard is going to be the best. Followed by Romulan / KDF. Sometimes they're about equal, sometimes the Romans are a little bit better. There's some interesting circumstances in which that would be the case. It doesn't fully manifest in this video, but that's my personal advice on it. And then we have Federation and just random races. And so then, with all those biases out of the way, I'm going to have 2 different lists after we get through all that stuff, which will be starships you might want for the trait or the console, especially if you're going to be an exotic-based captain. There's a lot of great starships outside of the exchange that are really strong platforms, to the point that you might only really look at the exchange just for a new trait or console for your ship. Of course, the other aspects, of course, are just to actually command. If you don't have a strong starship outside the exchange, maybe it's picking a starship just because it's a really nice platform, or maybe there's Space Barbie aspects involved too. Space Barbie isn't going to really be a consideration in this video, even though I know many of you will really have that as a consideration for you personally, and that's totally fine too. Of course, like the Lobi Store video from last March, I will be going over some baseline starships from the C-Store and then the fleet that I personally feel are very strong and very noteworthy. Now, this list has changed a little bit, but I'd say like 2/3 to 3/4 of ships seen here have pretty much stayed the same. We'll have a slide for the C-Store and the fleet for each type of starship. So first off, for Commander Tactical Starships from the C-Store, the Gemini Vanguard Warship is a very solid one. It's only instant science, and so outside of your raiders that have all universal seating, most starships in the game do expect you to have one of each general profession or bridge officer. And so since energy-based builds typically do not like science abilities, having instant science is about the best that you can expect. So Commander Tactical and Lieutenant Commander Tactical Miracle Worker is honestly pretty solid. So if you're doing an energy-based build, the Vanguard Warship is a very solid option. If you want really strong maneuverability, the Kyle Engineering Power Warbird is pretty nice as well. And if you want a torpedo-oriented playstyle from the C-Store, in my opinion, one of the best options is the Tier 6 Scimitars. I am showing off the tactical version this time versus the engineering version. And if you're really wanting to go for a DPS playstyle, this might be the better option for you. Both those ships right there have battle cloaks, and the Gemini 1 just has the wingman mechanic instead of a battle cloak. When it comes to the fleet, this has changed slightly, but of course the Gemini Vanguard ship is really nice. There also is a Klingon and Romulan version of this. Slightly different base stats, but generally for most players, they would prefer to have the wingman mechanic over a cloak, just because the wingman mechanic basically helps you get you a little bit more damage throughout the entire fight, and you don't have to worry about that utilizing the cloak to get that advantage over a plain Federation starship. Beyond that, we have the Fleet Pilot Bird of Prey, which again, it's just the Federation version, but it's got a battle cloak. Unfortunately, this ship, in order to get the modern skin, you can't actually get that from the C-Store. You do actually have to play the current Klingon recruitment event that's going on right now and get a character's look. So I think it's about level 10 or so. That's around by the point once you get to the mission where you defeat that one person and get the modern skin for this starship. It's kind of weird that they ditched the modern skin into a FOMO event instead of including it in the C-Store. But hey, I'm not someone who works at Cryptic, so I'm not one of those people that makes those types of decisions for you. Of course, we have the Fleet Strike Wing Escort, which is really nice. Unfortunately, it does have one tactical console less than the other fleet starships here, but you do get a hangar bay as well. So, and you still have 8 total weapons, so that is definitely nice. When it comes to C-Store and engineering starships, the Cardassian Flight Deck carrier is really nice, especially if you're going to do a cannon scatter volley build. It's not bad. The Kronos Temporal Dreadnought Cruiser is one of the best broadsiding tanks inside the game right now, and it has access to the best taunt console in the entire game too. It's really only if you're considering flight deck carriers or excluding ship-specific starships would you not really like the Kronos as much as other ships, or maybe you don't like the inertia, maybe like the Sagittarius or something like that. I replace the tactical version of the Bortask with the tactical Miracle Worker Cruiser here, just because I know a lot of you don't like that other ship as much. I got complaints on it, so very well. Here's the Miracle Worker Cruiser. If you're going to do a Polaron tanking build, this is one of the best platforms for that, because you get 6 tactical abilities, which you pretty much are going to need for that type of build. And yes, that means that I am saying that my personal preference for the Sovereign does hurt me on my Polaron broadsiding builds, because it only has 5 tactical abilities. But still, from a C-Star Starship, getting access to 5 tactical consoles, actually, I mistyped that. This actually should be 2 universal instead of 1. I'll probably fix that in the PowerPoint whenever that goes up. That actually should be 2 there, so for 6 total tactical consoles there. But the Cardassian and the Klothos Cruiser both have access to cloaks, which is nice. You at least will get a little bit of extra bonus damage at the start of combat whenever you decloak. So here for the fleet starships, this is the exact same. If you only have tier 1 military, the Coj Command Dreadnought Cruiser is very, very solid. Very high base stats here of 1.54 hull, 1.32 shields. Yes, it only has access to 3+1 tactical consoles when you make it tier 6X, and a maximum of 6 tactical abilities here. But it's a very solid vessel. Maybe not the best in the game, but look, from tier 1 military, you can't beat this ship, frankly. If you want the best cruisers from the fleet, you're either going to go with the Merrick Worker Battle Cruiser, which has a battle cloak and 6 tactical consoles, just like the Klothos, but it's got access to dual cannons this time. Or if you're willing to sacrifice Merrick Worker to get 2 hangar bays, the Pseudo-Lobi Silic is really, really nice, and it's also Lieutenant Commander Command. So, in my personal biased opinion, the Fleet Pseudo-Lobi Silic is the best fleet starship in the entire game. Just flat out. For every build besides exotic builds, the Pseudo-Lobi Silic can fulfill whatever needs that you're really wanting from it. It is really nice. It's not necessarily the most appealing ship, and if you don't care about battle cloaks, you could go with the Federation or Klingon variant. But both of them just have higher hull for the compensation of not having any cloak whatsoever on the starship. So if that's your thing, then go with the Federation or Klingon ship instead of the Pseudo-Lobi Silic. Cool. All right. Now, when it comes to science ships, again, we have very few C-Store science vessels that are actually fully statted in the C-Store. They are pretty rare. The Reconnaissance Explorer Warbird is a solid option here. If you want higher base stats, the Klingon or Federation version has a little bit higher base stats, but no battle cloak, obviously. So that's a downside there. The Cardassian Science Dreadnought is nice. It is a 4-3 fully statted starship from the C-Store. When it comes to weapons, at least. And the Eternal, in my opinion, is one of the best science tanks as well, especially when it comes to fully accessible science tanks. That alongside Legendary Voyager are both really, really solid starships. Granted, if you go to the fleet, there are some nice alternatives now too. We have the KDF Intel Science Vessel, which has a battle cloak alongside its other things that the Somerville has. We have the Fleet Colony. We have the Fleet Colony Engineer Scout Ship, which is a nice starship too. Unfortunately, you do need Tier 5 Colony to get that ship. It's not necessarily the most easily accessible starship. The Fleet Nautilus is a little bit easier to acquire, and it's much lower, just plain fleet military. Things like Tier 2 or Tier 3 fleet military to get that one. This is Tier 5 Colony to acquire this one. And of course, if you just want if you want a durable, well-rounded, decent science vessel, the Fleet Comet or Fleet Titan, as a science destroyer, really, really solid. It's got great base hull and shield stats. Like, this is really, really close to like what's it called? The Paradox Temple Dreadnought. Like, you're verging on that level of hull and shields, which isn't too far off from the Krenna Menarek Science Dreadnought too. So they're both really nice. Definitely their own ways. This is basically a budget Vern. This is a budget Paradox or Krenna Menarek Science Dreadnought when it comes down to it. And they're both from the fleet. A little bit easier to acquire than the Lucaria Drenura Scout ship, but very solid ships nonetheless. Now, when it comes to Lockbox and promo ships, I am going to start with some caveats before I really get into it. First off, if you're going to get the Lobi instead, go see my best Lobi Store starships. It's pretty much remained the same, with the one, I guess, somewhat notable exception that the Kelvin Timeline Intel Dreadnought Cruiser now has an alternative that's a count unlock, and that's Legendary Galaxy X. That ship is pretty much the Kelvin Dreadnought Cruiser, just that its hangar pets aren't as good, and it doesn't have any unique hangar pets, frankly. So, besides that, one little exception, this video has remained mostly the same, and the fact that they've added a couple of extra Lobi Store sets since that video came out. When it comes to the Lobi Store itself, though, there are a couple of ships that occasionally appear in the Lobi store that are normally promo pack starships. There's the Zincathi Centaur and the Gemini Recon ship. The Zincathi Centaur is very notable because it's able to have 7 tactical consoles on it. 5 plus the base 5 plus 1 for Miracle Worker plus 1 for Tier 6X. And it's Commander Miracle Worker Lieutenant Commander Command, which makes it one of the best torpedo platforms inside the game. And it's also got, well, I also forgot to neglect that this also has 2 hangar bays too, alongside what it's got. For the slight cost of that, you don't get the normal experimental weapon in the rear for the starship, but it's also got really high base stats too. So as long as you've got something to help it turn a little bit so that the torpedoes can stay in line of sight of the enemy, then you should be fine with this ship, no problem. The Gemini Recon ship is mainly picked for the go for the kill trait, though I think it should be noted highly that the domain defense screen is a very solid crit severity filler console. Also, if you're going to be a tanking captain, its clicky is a decent clicky too. It's not going to last for the full 20 seconds unless you have the full Dominion 3-piece space set, which at this point and still I'm not sure is really fully worthwhile to get all 3 pieces just for that set. Then again, if you have the really big Gemini Vanguard Gamma expansion pack, that's like 12 or 15,000 Zen. I can't remember at this point, but that really big one, you already have 2 of those consoles and want to try out and see how the 3-piece feels, you definitely can. But those ones from the pack are only from tier 5 versions of the Strikewing Escort and the Dreadnought Carrier. So, you're not going to have the full feel of how all the great tier 6 versions of the consoles are going to feel together. Still a great console nonetheless, and still a fantastic trade. Also, of course, as I've mentioned before, because we have 2 different MUDs packs that can give you an account unlocked Vern or your faction equivalent, because the Vern's not accessible to other factions right now. The 3 variants all do the exact same stats and everything. That's probably going to be fixed at some point in the near future. And also because a different MUD pack gives you an account unlock Paradox as an option, it's really hard to justify picking many of the science vessels on the exchange, frankly. I mean, if anything, you would be picking them for traits or consoles. And so I will mention those. And I'll mention 3 other science vessels too. But beyond that, I'm not really going to be covering very many of the options. I feel that this access here does do a lot. That being said, of course, if you aren't willing to spend the money for that, of course, picking a Vern or the KDF version if you're a KDF captain, or the Rowling version if you're a Rowling captain, it's all the exact same stats here. It's just the skin looks different. And yes, the Rowling version does not have access to a singularity core nor a cloak. It's just a regular starship with a regular warp core. Now, when it comes to actually choosing them, we'll start with traits and consoles. And we have 6 here to start off with. First off, the mirror angle is a nice pick for me personally. For me as a tank captain, all of my energy-based builds will use Fire Will or Scatter Volley. And if I have this trait with that, my weapons automatically do a 30 damage resistance debuff to enemies that I'm hitting, which is always helpful. If you have that combined with Cold-Hearted, enemies will melt quickly. The console from this ship is also pretty notable as well. Cascading Subatomic Disruptions is a nice clicky console for exotic-oriented builds. Granted, you probably aren't going to be able to use both on the same build. It's decently unlikely, unless you have like a cannon scatter volley based like combo of exotic and cannon scatter volley, which is I guess possible. It's just really rare. You definitely could combine those together if you really wanted to. The Knock-Jedge, or however you say this one here, it gives you the ceaseless momentum trait. This starship is really hard to find. Of these 3 here, this is the one that I almost can't find at all. Like I have one of these ships in one of my builds. I had to go to private channels in order to find this thing because this is just hard to find nowadays. Ceaseless momentum, in my opinion, is almost a best in slot and almost must-have torpedo trait. It's not because of the extra kinetic damage, even though that's definitely nice. It's because of this -1 second to recharge time of your torpedoes. This is what makes this really nice. And this is whenever every single time that a torpedo fires, that you're able to get this recharge on your torpedoes. So it really makes this trait, in my opinion, makes it so that if you happen to have a torpedo build with 5 forward weapons, nowadays, in my opinion, at least from what I've seen in a lot of builds, most people typically seem to just put 4 torpedoes in the front at maximum, and then 1 energy-based weapon. Normally, it's the Discovery dual beam bank for the Discovery 3-piece. But some people choose other things too. But yeah, this trait has definitely affected the torpedo meta. The third one over here, the Sarcophagus Dreadnought Carrier. It does have a good survival trait, and it does have a very nice exotic-based clicky that gives you a lot of threat. So if you're a exotic-based tank, multi-target tractor raise is pretty much a best-in-slot clicky console. That being said, I know there are other solutions to that console, and there are many different alternatives to Honor Dead if you're wanting a survival-based starship trait inside the game. And even in the new upcoming anniversary bundle, which I have mixed feelings on, it sounds like that the legendary Excelsior does have an account unlock alternative to Honor Dead as well as its new starship trait. So we'll have to see how things evolve as to how good of a replacement that it could be. But there's a lot of other decent replacements to Honor Dead as well inside the game too. It's just different. Well, yeah. For the average player, Honor Dead is just nice because you don't have to think about doing anything else to your ship for it to be effective. If you're taking lots of damage, then it gives you extra survival to help you last through that damage and to get your health back up. It's why it is highly valued. It's also because most players are fed, and that used to be a really cheap trade, and now it's not. As for the other 6 or other 3 starships, sorry, these ones are much more situational. The Jem'Hadar Dreadnought Carrier has a trait called Dominion Coordination. It also has a console too, but it's mainly, you only really pick the console if you're going for the full 3-piece Dominion set. The trait gives you a 33% bonus all damage to hangar pets within 10 kilometers of you. The big thing to note for this is a buff to all hangar pets that are friendly with you. This isn't just yours, this is your allies as well. So if you're running a nanny-based build, this is a really nice starship trait to add alongside your other ones, especially if you're in a team that's going to have a bazillion hangar pets. Keep in mind, a lot of players have lag if there's too many hangar pets and like ISC and HSC, so please be careful if you're building a pre-made team around hangar pets in particular. The Zona Science Vessel is one of my favorite science vessels in the game. Its trait, Kick 'em while they're down, is a very situational EPG trait. There are a couple of control abilities in the game that fully stack this up. The extra stuff off of this trait, if you do it wrong with those control abilities, then TFOs last longer. So you need to be very careful, and especially listen to like Augie when he talks about when he's using this trait, as to why he's using it, and watch when he's using those abilities to basically finish off enemies and doing this stuff on them. Do it wrong, it's very bad. And as in my science tank builds, there just aren't really enough starship trait slots to put something like this in there. Also, the fact that I have so few science abilities to be able to use for damage because I'm already using enough for my survival anyway. So that's just me. And of course, the last one. As much as I really dislike the Inquiry Battlecruiser, its trait and console are not terrible, and so I am putting them here. Weapons Hog to Fletcher's the full gives you extra haste and shields and temporary shields whenever you're using emergency power to shields. And with that particular ability anyway, it generally means you're either going to be using emergency power to weapons, you're dropping that, or you're going to be dropping emergency power to engines. Probably in the ideal world, you would actually drop emerge-powered engines. There are tank builds that don't use emerge-powered engines, and so this could be a way to drop that, rely upon deuterium surplus and other things to move around and get to targets, and your base is using the other emergency power as another source of fire and cycle haste. Granted, for this to be really good, in my opinion, you need to have your shield power at least 100 shield power. So your shields probably need to be your secondary power, which also means if you're on console, I don't really see this trait being as good for you, okay? Because you can't allocate your power specifically to make it so your weapons are really high and then your shields are next as high as possible. Because you have pre-made set power levels, it's going to be hard to justify this one. That being said, though, the VADA console from this ship is ridiculously good. Basically enough that I'm actually considering with this event to have this be my starship that I'm picking and put it onto my Klingon main in his promo D7. Just because the click off of this console is basically a 20-second reverse shield polarity. That's just for the forward facing. So if you happen to be running a cannon scatter volley tank and tanking from that front facing, you've gotten another 20 seconds of reverse shield polarity. Basically added to your build, that's probably already going to have reverse shield polarity 3 with a 28-second duration. And both that and this console are up every 2 minutes, and so that basically means versus energy damage, you're basically immune to energy damage half the time if you have this console combined with reverse shield polarity 3. So in that combination, it is really, really, really strong. I'm still debating between this and some of the a couple of other ships, but anyway, I will continue to think on those things as I get closer to finishing this event. Of course, it still hasn't started yet. So, as for starships to actually fly, there are a couple of considerations here. Unlike the last video, which I only had 6 starships, this one I've got 15. Keep in mind, when it comes to super endgame, there are a lot of really bad lockbox and promo ships, just because a lot of them have not scaled very well. But there are still a lot of really good ones too. A lot of ones that are like on the edge, and I know I'm going to get flamed if I don't include some of these ships. That being said, I'm probably going to still get flamed for certain ships that I'm excluding out of here. But I think a selection of 15 ships is going to be representative enough of a lot of different things that you might be thinking of. For these groups of 3 per each slide, I've got 3 science vessels, 2 different groups of directed energy weapon based ones, 3 that are extremely similar that are agile, and there's just different takes on how you would take them. 3 that are more on the tankier side of things, whether it's being more durable or to actually tank in this game. 3 in particular that have either a unique mechanic or have the potential to have access to a unique console that can make them really, really nice, if there's a particular thing that you want. And then there's like 3 other miscellaneous ones that are good, but don't really fall into any other group. So with that, let's go into the science vessels first. Here's the 3 ships. Again, if you have the Paradox account unlocked, the promo Sona, Science Dreadnought, and the promo Carenum aren't going to have quite as much value for you. So there is that to take into consideration. Also in terms of durability as well, a little bit lower hull, a little bit higher shields of the fleet Titan as well is another consideration for you as well to think about. That ship does exist now in Star Trek Online. That being said, when it comes to tanking, it's been said for a while that the Sona Collector Science Dreadnought is one of the best like science tanks when it comes to the raw stats if you're going against the Borg. I'm not a personal fan of it, but I know there's others that do like it. So I'm listing it here because I normally ignore the ship altogether, and I might as well list it at least once on the channel. The Carenum Anarch Science Dreadnought, in my opinion, is the best directed energy weapon science tanking platform in the game. It's like on par with like the Crossfield Science Spearhead. It's just that this ship is a little less maneuverability to get that extra hangar bay and a little bit higher shields than what the Crossfield has. And then, of course, we have the promo pilot scout vessel, which is the most maneuverable science vessel in the game. It's also extremely high flexible seating. It doesn't have any of the super desirable science specializations, so there is that downside to this ship, but super maneuverable and a 4-2 setup instead of the normal 3-3 for most science vessels in the game is still not bad, and it's got radar flanking too. So yeah, that's basically it for the science vessels. I don't have a ton to say about them in particular. I've got more to say about these guys though. And when I was making this list, I was realizing that all three of these ships right here pretty much do the exact same thing. Well, besides the Kelvin D7, which has Lieutenant Commander command to do torpedo stuff. Between these three, if you're gonna do torpedoes, the D7's the clear winner. Otherwise, your three choices here are all extremely similar. You got the Kelvin D7, which was to serve as a solid tank. Either way that you want to play it. And because this was Lieutenant Commander pilot there, it means if you want to do a broadsiding tank build, you can justify doing it Lieutenant Commander Engineering because you can actually use one of your engineering abilities here for attack pattern lambda. So you can justify to use rod point marker, for instance, if you really wanted to in that Lieutenant Commander tactical seat. All three of these ships, by the way, have access to 5 tactical consoles as their base. The D7 has a battle cloak. The Freedom class has radar flanking and offensive cruiser commands. Their mobility is very similar. Obviously, as they're going to the right, they get a little bit faster, but their durability is generally about the same. D7 is a little bit higher in shields, but otherwise they're extremely similar. The Mirror Constitution, it's a nice thing. It's only got one specialist seat, but it has double commander seats. So that's the one thing you're getting off of the ship, and it's got double commander. It doesn't have any force science seat either. So that plus Freedom class, if you don't want any force science, one of those ships is what you're going to be wanting. And yeah, if you're a DPS captain, you might just do the commander engineering for double aux to bat and merge powered weapons and merge powered engines, and you use the lieutenant commander and ensign universal as tactical. Then even if you're a Federation captain, you can have 4 SROs on your build and not really have much of issues on your starship. The Freedom class is the one promo ship in this group here that it is a little bit weird. That it is as durable as these other ones, but as a frigate, if you really consider frigate class super different from these other ones, but when you're considering what all these things are bringing to the table, my opinion, it makes a bit of sense. It also makes sense that it has to go to promo to get that durability versus what other frigates you would expect them to probably be. Of course, we only have 2 frigates in the game right now, so we'll have to wait until we get more frigates in the future to see how good they would actually be. When you've considering that one frigate was from a FOMO event and the other one is from promo packs, there's not really many frigate options in the game, so. And the frigate is basically just a battle cruiser, but a bit more maneuverable and has radar flanking and flexible seating. So yeah, that's my stuff on these 3 ships. I think they're all awesome. Obviously, as a tank captain, I honestly prefer. Gut feeling is the D7 because it's got a battle cloak and it's Year of Klingon. So of course I'm going to take the D7. Mirror Constitution is very, very close. It's very, very close though. Now, of course, though, if you're actually going to be pure on for doing survival, I think these other 3 starships are very solid options too. If it's just flat survival is what you're going for, the Liberated Borg Juggernaut is a very, very solid option. It only has turn rating of 5. Even most cruisers that you find out there only have a turn rating of at least 6. This one is worse than that, so you do need to keep that in mind. It's got very low turning and impulse, but it has good inertia, so it is actually going to. So basically, it's going to be hard to turn, but this thing doesn't slide like other ships do. Like that skidding that you get with some ships after you go really fast and then try to turn. This ship is not going to do skidding too much. but it's going to be still, it's going to take a while to turn this thing without, using competitive engines or something like that to turn it faster. Commander command. So you have that going for you. This is going to be a solid torpedo platform. So you have that going for you here too. And there's no force science seed of this one. The other two ships here have a force science seed in some fashion. This ship does not. And its particular lance is a plasma-based lance in the starship itself. The Valor Juggernaut, if you're only going to be fighting the Borg and don't care about your shields, this one's probably a little bit better. A little bit faster, higher hull, better turning, but it's very low inertia. It is going to skid and fly around whenever you're trying to slow down and stop. Because of its particular seating, it does mean that even if you're if you do want to tank on this thing, even if you're going with my normal rules of, hey, I want 3-hole heals versus shield polarity, and all that stuff, you can still do that on the Valor Juggernaut. You have to use the NC Universal for engineering, have emerged part of weapons 1, emerged part of engines 1, Oxysif, versus polarity 2, hazard measures 1, then use that command C for rally point marker 1. You're able to get all that there. And because it's Commander Miracle Worker, as a base 5 tactical consoles, you do get 7 tactical consoles on this starship too. So yeah, this is a very solid ship. Whether you want that ship over the Liberated Borg, that's up to you. I think they're both, but at least when it comes to tanking, they're both very comparable. That being said, though, when I got my random promo ship, promo thing, when I was opening up R&D boxes one day because I was needing Lobite for a certain new set that came out at one point, I was like, of all the ships, I want a promo D7, and so that's what I got. In my opinion, if you're looking at a full Oxtabat tank that uses 2 hangar bays, I think the promo D7 is the best tank in the game for that particular playstyle. Especially if you're going for cannon scatter volley, it's pretty much the best. If you're going for broadsiding, I think there's 1 or 2 ships that actually are very similar to this one that you might want to take instead. But this is still definitely way up there too. And I've talked about my particular build with the promo D7 in my tanking in the Tier 6X era video. And you can see the build entirely there. It's a fantastic ship, Miracle Worker abilities, defense cruise commands, 2 hangar bays, and over the promo Enterprise, this ship gets a battle cloak. So this is better than the Miracle Worker Enterprise because of that aspect. When it comes to the special ships, first off is the promo packs Section 31 Command Heavy Battle Cruiser. This is here because of Swarm mode. It's also got Dark mode, which is a cloak. It's functionally a cloak in the game. The base stats here are extremely deceiving because Swarm mode improves your hull inertia and turn drastically, but drastically reduces your hull. So, and it also increases your damage in like an AoE faction around your ship. So there is that. This is also one of those ships that like you never see on the exchange because it's that valuable that you basically have to go to private channels to sell this, to basically buy or sell this ship. So it is a highly sought after ship. If you're wanting to make money off of selling a ship, this might not be a bad option either to choose. The other 2 options here are ones that have some sort of unique console technically available to them, but you have to get a separate ship beyond just getting these ships to get the uniqueness that you would want from these ships. The Voth Rampart Flight Deck Carrier, it's a very solid broadsiding tank if you're wanting to go that route. What you have to do, like the nice thing about the Voth ships is that you're able to use a certain console that is from the Tier 5 Voth Dreadnought Cruiser, which is an ultra rare token starship from Phoenix Packs. It's like the only one there that's worth anything anymore besides Tier 6X upgrades from that. Now the console there pretty much is the invincible trait, but in a console slot. Basically, if you take damage that would basically destroy your ship, you can immediately use the click key and immediately come back with full health, full shields, and tons of power on your starship. So it immediately brings you back into the fight, and it's awesome. Like, the reason why you use the invincible trait, frankly, in most PvE combats is basically to stop spike damage from killing you. The Voth have the alternative of, oh, you just destroyed my ship? Nope, I'm going to use my clicky and immediately come back and start attacking you again. So it's basically just another way of going around it. Because we have, what, 12 to 13 consoles available to our starships, but only 6 starship traits. Honestly, losing a console, if you're wanting that type of protection on your starship, losing a console is a little bit cheaper than losing a starship trait, because there are a lot of powerful starship traits in the game right now, and that's only going to build as we move forward, especially whenever we're considering that they're adding more and more legendary starships instead of regular starships, which means we aren't getting as many new consoles, but we're getting lots and lots of new starship traits. So those are going to start to become much more powerful than they are currently, while we're probably not going to get as many strong consoles in the future in this game. In the same vein of thought, though, for something that's like making you unkillable in consoles, the Not Cool ships have the time slip console, which is from the Not Cool science vessel, and that's a really, really strong console. It's basically a clicky that lasts for 30 seconds unless your tube gets damaged, which is really rare in PvE content. It's basically a 30-second, hi enemies, you aren't going to kill me right now, and it doesn't matter what damage type that you're doing, you're not going to get hit and die. So it is a really nice console. The ship itself is kind of meh, but in my opinion, outside of the Not Cool science vessel, the other 2 Not Cool ships are kind of meh to begin with, frankly. Its seating isn't the greatest. It's okay, but it could be, if this was being made today, it would be quite a bit different, frankly. And only 3 base tackle consoles on a battle cruiser, not as great. It does get a battle cloak, though. As for our last 3 ships, we have the Tholian Jorguma carrier, which I have here because if you're going to do a nanny type of build, I did mix up the colors there. It is Commander Universal and Commander Science. Sorry about that. Besides, I mean, nanny types of builds are really niche, and in certain DPS circles, very frowned upon. So it's a very niche type of player that would actually want this ship, but it definitely exists. Also, keep in mind, if you're just wanting a hanger of the special Tholian pets, the Tholian Dreadnought Cruiser, the Tier 6 one from loot boxes, is available as an account unlocked starship via Mud's Market, in one of those limited packs that eventually comes back from time to time. So if you're okay with just one hanger bay, there is another option available to you. There is also the Styx Terran Dreadnought Cruiser. In my opinion, this ship has actually gotten significantly weaker because of the addition of those new support carrier frigates that are usable on all of the 2 hanger starships inside the game. And because of that, flight deck carriers have gotten significantly stronger when it comes to tanking, because they debuff enemies in terms of not just their damage, but also their damage resistance because of the sensor scan ability available to those pets too. So, like, the nice thing off of the Styx is there's now a similar type of frigate available to all flight deck carriers now. So it is still a decent option. It's not as strong, in my opinion, it's not quite as OP strong as it used to be. And as the last option, of course, because I know some of you saw the initial stats of the legendary Burrell, Bird of Prey, and you're like, I want a 5/1 plus experimental starship. Well, the Kelvin D4X is your option, and it's a really nice starship. It does have Commander Universal that was updated on the wiki. I've actually never owned this ship, but I've heard many wondrous things from this ship. With any Commander Universal starship, you are down 1 bridge officer ability. For the starship, instead of being down an actual full bridge officer seat, you're just down 1 lieutenant commander ability. frankly. It still has base 5 tap consoles. It's got pile abilities, radar flanking, and a battle cloak. Just no like improved radar flanking or no enhanced battle cloak. But it still is a very solid chip regardless. And if you don't really care about the enhanced battle cloak from like the legendary Burrell, this is a very fantastic option, frankly. And that's basically it for this video. And those are just my, again, I know that there were other ships that are technically available through promo packs. Like I know that the original Tier 6 Enterprise and the Tier 6 Enterprise J are both Commander Temporal and Lieutenant Commander Command, but they both have weaknesses too, and that's why I didn't decide not to include those ships in their KDF and Romulan equivalents. They have issues, especially in modern STO, and the fact that flight tickets are stronger than ever. It's hard to justify those ships, and the fact that you have the Legendary Galen, which basically fills the role of those ships basically play in modern STO. So yes, there are other ships I could have included, but I felt, in my biased opinion, that they did need to be included. Feel free to include it in the comments what you felt should have been included. If there's something that I sorely neglected and you felt that I should have highly sought after and included in this video. Again, like, because I don't own every single Lockbox, Lobi, and promo pack Starship, there definitely might be some traits and consoles and Starship layouts and things that I'm significantly like undervaluing. That is definitely a thing, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. So yeah, feel free to go into the comments and prove me wrong if you want. Otherwise, hopefully this video was helpful to you, and there'll be some more videos coming out over the next couple of weeks, including that anniversary bundle for this anniversary. We'll see how the value potentially changes over the next few weeks. Thanks for watching, everyone, and enjoy your weekend.